always makes it a little bit special. I think one of the things that we have to keep in mind is we're coming up to the 3-year anniversary of the Cannabis Act, October 17th of 2021. And as a chamber, there's always opportunities for us to talk about good jobs, good opportunity, and economic diversification. A couple of quick statistics for you. The world's 4 largest cannabis retailers are housed in Alberta: Fire and Flower, Spirit Leaf, Nova Cannabis, and High Tide. If that was any other sector, you couldn't get a government official to shut up about that. But for some reason, we can't get anybody to talk about that because unfortunately, we're still dealing with the stigmas of the past. And so we have to figure out how we can change the tenor of the conversation to talk about jobs and economic impact. Economic impact's a really important point of that as well. So when you look about cultivation and retail, the economic contribution from Stats Canada is about 3.36 billion of last year, of 2020, of sales in Canada. The economic contribution to the entire economy is $16.1 billion. That means that retail is only 1/5 of that, which means the true opportunity is in the chamber network. It's builders, it's window wrappers, it's construction company, communication companies, marketing, so on and so forth. So the more that we can have that conversation about the economic opportunities in the sector is a really exciting one. And I won't talk for too long because I know there's lots of people to go through, but the last one is to keep in mind, 2 years, we're only $3.9 billion away in the cannabis sector in Canada from eclipsing the entire automotive industry in this country. We should be talking about that as a subject leader opportunity, not only domestically, but internationally. And the chamber, why I'm lucky enough to be a significant involvement with the chamber, is because nobody can represent the sector, not just cultivation and retailers like the chamber. And I look forward to having that conversation, and thank you for that opportunity.
After a year of this, I usually don't mute myself again. So Nathan, did you have a presentation that you wanted to go through? Because we might as well. We're going to speak with Nathan, and then we have Sam, and Blaine, Jeffrey, and then Dr. Robert McDonald. So we'll let you lead the conversation for about 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, my apologies. So I think that, Alberta's in a very unique situation when it comes to the opportunity in front of us. We now have 600 stores in the country. We have the largest robust per capita sector in the country, where we're generating, between $600 and $900 million in economic impact through retail sales. We have a whole opportunity to continue to invest in the agricultural component of that. We do have to keep in mind that this is an agricultural component primarily first. And when we talk about cannabis in Canada, we have to keep in mind that, the inebriation effect is only one small aspect of it. Right. Not only do you have the capabilities, so inside the plant itself, the primary 2 acronyms that we hear in the cannabis sector are THC and CBD. THC is the psychoactive, psychotropic aspect. That's the one that gets you high. And CBD is, one of the benign aspects of the plant. There's over 140 different cannabinoids in the plant. There's different terpenes, which are essential oils that make up the plant, and different flavors in there. And there's also flavonoids that are in the plant, which are actually the taste and the flavor inside the product. The thing that has never been researched is how the different cannabinoids can have different effect. There is research, but not extensive research that has not been peer reviewed and has definitely not been commercialized. The entourage effect of how those terpenes combine with the cannabinoids, and then how those flavonoids work with the terpenes that work with the cannabinoids. So the opportunity for peer reviewed research and innovation in a country that is leading the world as the primary subject matter, because we did move first, is one that we should be considering. The benefit for us is that's a political conversation that becomes amenable to be accepted, because that's an agricultural product with agricultural applications and foodstuff applications where their regulations can be malleable from other sectors to other industries in a way that perhaps unlocks the opportunities, where we de-emphasize the intoxicant and we re-emphasize the non-intoxicant feature. Now, that's just one part of the agricultural component as well, is of course we have the whole development of hemp as well that is in there, and all of the applications of hemp. And Canada and Alberta has again been an incredible leader in that space. If anybody wants to ever look at a really fascinating opportunity, there's something called Initech in Vegreville, which is actually funded by the federal government and the Alberta taxpayers. And it has been doing commercial hemp research for 18 years. It is one of the world's leader in actual hemp utilization. Alberta has the North America's largest decortalization plant in our province, where you dry the plant. The top of the plant is perfect for paper, and the bottom of the plant is perfect for fiber, which is what you put in hempcrete, which is stronger than steel infused. You make liners for it. Daimler Chrysler is actually looking at Canada as an opportunity to grow and refine and process body parts for the inside of their car liners so that they are actually biodegradable, so they qualify for EU tax credits and environmental tax credits. But we haven't seen that commercialization. So you have an inebriant space that Alberta is leading in. You have an incredible research and innovation space where we have some amazing leaders in the agricultural space that if we make it easier for them to continue to have those conversations at a research based level. And we have an agricultural space as well. And the agricultural space is one that provides a really interesting opportunity for Indigenous reconciliation as well, because of the opportunity to have the youngest population in Canada combined with one of the youngest sectors in Canada, and marry the two together, right? So there's so many facets of cannabis that I don't think people realize. Cannabis is a big, broad term. And most of the time when people think about cannabis, they're thinking about beads, bongs, and Bob Marley and Rastas. That's not what cannabis is, right? And there's nothing wrong with beads, bongs, and Bob Marley. But, you know, the tropes of the past are really problematic for us to see the commercialization opportunities. Polling showed in the last election, the last federal election, 0.4% of Canadians said that they voted based on cannabis legalization, which indicates that people cared more in this country about animal welfare than they did about cannabis legalization. The most fascinating thing is the Canadian citizenry has actually adopted and moved on from cannabis legalization. The real barrier for us to having very insightful, inventive opportunities to build globally built perspective businesses in this country that can scale internationally is primarily the barrier is in three groups: politicians, bureaucrats, and influencers. And the funny thing is, they're representing the tropes of the past more than the citizens are representing those feelings. So the more that we can have conversations like this, where we can talk about economic contributions, corporate social responsibility, social impact analysis, the more opportunity, research and innovation, agricultural product development, that, you know, there's going to be a lot of money coming up in the next budget about single ban plastics, the single use plastic ban. Why can't Alberta understand that that's coming? We invest in hemp growing to hemp manufacturing that fills that gap, funded by the federal government, who is going to actually look for ways to create biodegradable things for utilization in the cannabis sector, but other sectors. So, and we have that research at home. We just don't want to talk about it. And that's a real unfortunate circumstance. And so how do we make it so that it's okay to talk about it? And there's simple steps. So, for example, there is not one provincial or federal ministry that has the economics of cannabis inside its mandate. That is bananas, right? Like, so when we're talking about a sector that has a $16.1 billion from Stats Canada economic contribution on Canada, nobody has that living within their portfolio. Could you imagine if you had another $16.1 billion portfolio that nobody was talking about? My favorite example on this is when those unfortunate jobs were lost in Oshawa. There was 880 jobs lost in the automotive industry when the GM plant closed. You had the prime minister and you had the premier standing in front. 2 days later, 2,500 jobs were cut in the cannabis sector from Canopy and closing greenhouses in BC. And it was not even a local story. There is so little emphasis on actually the job creation. That is one of the biggest things that us within the cannabis sector need the opportunity to work with partners like the Chamber, work with small businesses who can figure out how to become medium-sized businesses, who can become large-sized businesses, who can also take that subject matter and expertise and export it to the world. So, you know, what I hope to leave the opportunity with is that we haven't seen what we haven't seen. Like, the interesting thing about this experiment is we don't want to take anything away from Uruguay, who did go first, but Uruguay isn't Canada, right? They're not a G20 nation. They're not a leading member of the Commonwealth nation. The world has looked to us as a subject matter expert on that. And the more that we can quantify that cannabis is not just retail and cultivation, the more opportunity it is to take the businesses, the leadership, the opportunity that we have grown, built, and worked here and refined while being punched in the face or paying disproportionate, exorbitant amounts of regulatory support. We can export those services, knowledge, and expertise to the world. When I started this November 4th of 2017, 2 nations on earth were talking about cannabis legalization. It's now 66 nations in the world that are talking about cannabis legalization. The opportunity for us to be at that tip of that spear doesn't happen very often. This is our internet if we don't screw it up. And we're right on the precipice of screwing it up, to be perfectly honest. And we need help to do it. So I'm going to park all that diatribe because I don't know how much time I have when I put that. And I'm going to put one other thing on your guys' radar to think about. So in a worldwide global pandemic, when the whole world is looking for an opportunity to bring tourists back into their countries and create domestic tourism opportunities with a sector who has been waylaid perhaps more than anyone else, like tourism and hospitality, which by the way is the largest employers of 18 to 35, which is the largest demographic of under and unemployable in Canada. We should be kind of having that conversation. You create differentiation with the assets that you have at hand. We have cannabis legalization. Why can we not have the conversation of cannabis tourism and hospitality, where we figure out what that opportunity looks like? Is it cannabis infused restaurants, where we conveniently have a federal review coming October 17th of 2021 to create a groundwork and a regulatory framework that can be? Is that farm gate? So farm communities or local areas, perhaps like your own, that have that opportunity, have that capability of developing a model that can, again, create new jobs, new opportunities with local food, local culinary, local chefs, with local cannabis, that creates a differentiated experience in your home community that we can learn, find it out, and export it to the world. Why can we not be the people who figure out something as simple, working with our post-secondary institutions, about what is an inebriation unit for cannabis? Could you imagine if Alberta was the people that could say, we know what 0.8 is for alcohol in cannabis? That kind of subject matter expertise would be something that would give us an incredible opportunity to show that Albertans are thinking responsibly. We're thinking about corporate social responsibility. We're thinking about societal stewardship, but we're thinking about economic opportunity as well. So, we've done the first part, and I would say we've done it 50%, right? We've really dropped the ball a whole hell of a lot on the first thing, which makes sense, right? When you lead the world, it is the rule in politics is it's much easier to give somebody something than take it away. So make the rules stringent and hard, and then lessen them as you go. And that's where we're coming to that period now. But the next opportunity for us to lead is cannabis tourism and hospitality with a sector that's waylaid to the world. And that's a conversation we're not even having yet. So I'd love to start to interject that into the conversation, because what an incredible possibility for where something that started. And it doesn't even have to be about getting you high. It can be about, a non-psychoactive cannabis like CBD or CBN. CBN is something that helps you go to sleep. Sorry. As a former recreational retailer, I am not allowed to make medical claims. So I have heard that it perhaps has led to the capability to help you go to sleep at night. I can see Blaine being like, dude, I hear you. So, there's incredible opportunities. We just have to seize them. And it's really exciting to partake in a conversation with people like yourselves who are willing to start having those conversations with us.
Perfect. Thank you, Nathan. And perfect timing. There was a lot of interesting things that you just covered, and I can see Noreen and I are in the background typing away back and forth to each other. We are definitely going to be talking with you in the next couple of weeks, and maybe a little bit more if we have time at the end. Next, I'd like to introduce Sam Kahn from Green Rock Cannabis, and she's just going to talk for about 5 minutes on the retail end of the business.
Hi, my name is Sam Kahn. I am manager at Green Rock Cannabis retail store here in Lethbridge. We are an Alberta-based cannabis retail store. And with that being said, which is a huge competition, there's a lot of stores in Alberta, especially in Lethbridge. We've got about 20 stores altogether. And that's a lot of stores for how many people are actually in Lethbridge. And so at Green Rock Cannabis, we try to focus on education, just like what Nathan said, a lot of that is lacking and the research is lacking. And so by focusing on education, I think that means we focus a lot on the newcomer, because the newcomer, it's so confusing. There's so much to learn. There's THC, CBD, something that might help you in the day, something that might help you at night. You can tell the newcomer when they come in, they look nervous. They are looking around all not unsure of things. And it's really nice to be able to have an open store, something that looks nice to come into. And they usually right away, they go, oh, it's really nice in here. And I think they expect something else from us. They expect bongs, Rasta, they expect incense, they expect, I don't know exactly what they expect, maybe like a bong store, but we're trying to change that stigma. And I really like that we have that opportunity, especially at Green Rock. I have a big opportunity to do that. And with with educating people, we're really trying to make sure people are leaving with the right product. We have people coming in that say they went somewhere, and because we're not allowed to talk about the medical side of things, it makes it hard because it's hard to give people what they need. So we need to find a way around that. And by talking to them and educating them, we can kind of get around the exact medical conversation. I want to say at least 10% of the people coming into my store are newcomers. And that's quite a bit of the people coming in. And I think it's because we have a huge sign on the road that says education based, and we have so many people coming in and they just want to know what it's about. Like, so often people come in and say, do you sell drugs here? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. I'm sorry. We don't, that's not what we do. And so a lot of these people are sent in by their doctors and they are asking about stress, PTSD, sleep, arthritis, pain. They want to get off their pain meds. And we're kind of stuck in this zone of just being like, I'm not allowed to talk about that. But what we have at my store, if you've never been in, is this big Cannabis Explained poster. So I want to share that if I can, and I'm just going to go over it super quick. I've never shared my screen before, so hopefully I do this right. Oh. Sorry, I should have tried this already. I thought it would be easier. I just am trying to press, oh, there it is. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is our Cannabis Explained poster. There's a lot of information on there. I'm not going to be able to go over it all, but I want to go over the top part especially. There's three main, like when people come in, there's three main questions I ask them. Why do you want to consume? What do you want to consume? And how do you want to consume? And that's what this poster shows, especially. And a big thing that even Nathan mentioned is you don't need to smoke and you don't need to get high. For example, we had a couple come in last night and they said CBD's the body high and THC's the head high, right? And I was like, no, actually, CBD doesn't get you high. It's a lot like a coffee, it stimulates you. THC gets you high, it intoxicates your brain, kind of like a beer. And when I explain it that way, people are like, oh, that makes a bit more sense. And so CBD can be used that's usually what people want to use in the first place, I would say. I don't think people should start with THC. They should really just start with CBD, see how that makes them feel. And there's, as you can maybe see on the poster, there's chocolates, mints, gummies. We've got topicals. The cool thing about topicals is you can have THC in it and CBD, but the THC, when you put it on your skin, it doesn't get through your blood barrier, so it won't get you high, even at all. And a lot of people don't necessarily know that, so they shy away from it, but it actually works a lot better as a topical. And then, of course, we have smokables. If you want to smoke, you can smoke. And so that's mostly what I wanted to show today, was just our quick little Cannabis Explained poster. At the bottom, there's a bit more about the terpenes that Nathan mentioned, which is it's a whole other ball game. So at Green Rock Cannabis, we focus on selection so that we can have something for every single person that comes in our door. It's been interesting lately, people come in asking about their animals, and it's like, I can't exactly help you with that, but some people buy this product. So there's something for almost everybody, I want to say, and that's maybe something not everybody knows, because we don't need to just get you high. We kind of just want to help you find what you need. Yeah, I think that's all I got to share about today.
Perfect, Sam. I think, I appreciate how you talk about the need for the education and better understanding, because there were some things that I just learned, the difference with, anyway. That was a great learning chart. So yeah, I would love to, if we should go over that sometime. Just it is that education piece. And it was interesting to see Nathan put in the comments that the fastest growing population of cannabis consumers in Canada is seniors. That's very, very interesting. So I'm going to turn about 5 minutes over to Blaine now, and he's been a chamber member. He has Bridge Bud Supply since I think you guys opened your doors. So it's been great working with you, Blaine. And like I said, you won a Business of the Year award. So even as a business, I think that shows some of the strength as a business itself. Go ahead, Blaine.
Thank you very much, Cindy. And thank you very much, Sam. That was great. Most of the things that you touched on are things that we try to focus on in Bud Supply Group as well. Being open, transparent, and really hoping that people leave learning something new, whether they're new to cannabis or they're the long timers, as we call them. So I just wanted to talk about, kind of the community and culture around what we try to create in our stores. And, one of the biggest things, our mission is that we're leaders in the products we offer, the genuine service we provide, the teams we build, all while improving every community in which we operate. So a big part of that is being good neighbors. And it's not just to, the people within our community, like our producers, our staff. It's also people who are not our customers. You know, one thing that we focus on our last push for, you know, community engagement was a community cleanup initiative, where we were going around all the different communities in which we operate, putting on our green shirts and just picking up garbage. We would make it a team event. We did it 2 Sundays a month over the summer, and we would just, you know, go out and have some fun, have a barbecue after, and things along those lines. And, you know, I love that you guys a couple of you touched on pets. I wrote down in my notes, maybe that's something we can work into our community engagement. How can we get that involved? Because that aligns with our mission. But the next thing that I wanted to talk about were, you know, who are our customers? Who are the people that come in and talk to us? So the main, you know, majority of our customers are what we call experience hunters. Their average age of about 37 years old. They're people who have a steady income and they value their local community. So the biggest thing that we try to get across is that, you know, we're a part of the community. One of the major things we try to focus on in our stores is knowing each and every one of our customers by name. That way you can really tailor that service. If you know who you're talking to, it's really easy to put them into the right product, especially if you've dealt with them many times before. So that's one thing that we really try to foster, is just the community. And then digging in a little bit deeper, we also have the curious. So these are people who are, you know, a little bit older, you know, 40s, 50s, 60s, and they're newcomers to cannabis. And one thing that we really try to be a part of is breaking down preconceptions. You know, one thing you'll find in our stores is a big, beautiful open layout. You know, I kind of equate it to an Alberta version of an Apple store for cannabis. So it's a lot of bright colors, you know, white and then muted grays. And then we have a barnwood feature or a burnt cedar feature, something along those lines. So really put a local spin on it. I grew up on a farm about an hour north of Lethbridge, and all the barnwood you see in our stores came from that farm. We're out now, so if anyone has a barn I can come and take down, that would be great. Just point me in the right direction, and we'll start putting it up in our next store. And then we have the long timers, you know, those people who are daily cannabis users. And, you know, it's everyone from your city councilors to people in scrubs to people in suits to people who are absolutely filthy and I have to clean my display cases after they walk out, which is great. I love seeing all of my customers. But yeah, it's people from all different walks of life. So I think one thing that's really going to help, you know, kind of end the stigma is when people just start talking about it more, you know, being a little bit more open with the fact that, you know, sometimes they use cannabis for an escape. It's no different than having, you know, a beer on the weekend, something along those lines. It's one of those things that is just becoming more commonplace. So I love everything that Nathan touched on, you know, the opportunity in the industry. And that's something that we hope to grow into. And, you know, I hope that we're taking the right steps to get there. So that was all I wanted to talk about, guys. If you have any questions, we just opened a brand new store on Stafford Drive North, right beside Pops. Chase, Brad, and myself are opening the store tomorrow. So you can come on in and watch us fumble around the drawers and try to remember what's on the menu. But yeah, thank you very much, Cindy.
Thank you, Blaine. And I appreciate how you talk about keeping things local and still serving the community. That's an important function of being a business in our city as well. I'm really excited now to introduce Jeffrey Nielsen. He is the CEO of Custom Cannabis, and you're on the agriculture side of things. I guess I'm not 100% how you would classify yourself. So I'm going to give you we've got you slated for about 5 minutes or so as well. But tell us your story, Jeff.
Hi, Cindy. Geez, thanks for having me. Super excited to be having a conversation about cannabis. My life was kind of dramatically changed in about 2012 when I was diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma. I had intransic lumps in a bunch of different spots all over my body. And, you know, I have, my wife and I have 4 little kids. And, you know, when you get kind of given a terrible diagnosis like that, I mean, first off, the first thing that went through my head was, I did not agree with their assessment. Like the statistics of whether I was living or dying had nothing to do with what they thought. So I had a very defining moment as I looked at kind of starting to begin my treatment. And you can kind of see over on, it's backwards, but I've kind of got my little blue degree over there. That's a U of L degree. So I have a finance degree from U of L, and I've spent most of my life selling life insurance and investments to, you know, farmers in Southern Alberta, and a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't have anybody kind of represent them. So when cannabis found me, you know, married, 4 kids, tried it. It had been around a little bit in my life when I was working in the oil patch prior to going back to university, but quite honestly, trying it at the time when I was, you know, really in a different state than I was when I was sick and going through treatment. I mean, I was personally at the time much more interested in my drug alcohol than cannabis at that time. So as I kind of was diagnosed and was going through treatments and surgeries, and, you know, more surgeries and more tumors, I basically, between my second and third surgery, had started taking large amounts of Rick Simpson oil, which is just basically a whole plant cannabis extract. And like, lo and behold, if it didn't happen to me, I wouldn't have believed it. But between my second and third surgery, I'm supposed to go in and get a bunch of lumps taken out behind my knee, and the ultrasound before they're marking me up, they can't find it. They're searching around my lower calf and up into my hamstring. And I was like, gosh darn it, don't you know it? Those lumps are gone. So they claimed it a miracle and kicked me out of the program. But I basically, I've been now 6 years. I was just kind of given my all clear, geez, maybe 3 months ago. So from having lumps in, you know, 4 different places to having none, and being a, you know, honestly, like a really square guy. I mean, I got life insurance licensed when I was 19 because I love life insurance and investments. And I love being able to work with families and help them reach their goals. So when I experienced what I experienced with cannabis, as I was going through treatments and able to come off as an alternative to a lot of alcohol, a lot of opiates, a lot of tramadol, a lot of hydromorph. You know, I was a hot mess when cannabis found me. So it allowed me to kind of let go of the side of the pool of the things that I knew that I was doing and coping with that were ultimately had horrible side effects for me. You know, the one saving grace is I felt like my situation was significant enough that it pushed me hard enough that I had no other alternative but to search for other alternatives than kind of the traditional treatment. So I kind of moved fast through that process. You know, cannabis literally saved my life. And from that process back in kind of 2013, 2014, we also then began looking at the process of being involved in commercial cultivation because the rules around that were changing. And when, you know, when I was sick and off and reading the Cannabis Act, it was clear to me that if you weren't involved in actually cultivation and having the plants, you were for the most part always going to be relying on someone else, and different groups that would work inside of the cannabis supply chain. And really, there is nothing more upstream than us, than the farm. So basically, my financial services career had me in touch with a whole putting together process of designing a large-scale cannabis facility. And so we're currently operating in Claresholm right now. Yay for Southern Alberta. Some of you know, I'm sure all of you know, it is dry down here in Southern Alberta. And that really is a major risk factor in the reduction of risk in commercial cultivation. Like we couldn't grow powdery mildew here if we wanted to, right? The orthographic uplift from the air going from west to east means it comes crashing down the eastern slopes, dry. So, you know, this dry air right now, other groups in BC and Ontario, which are traditionally known as more, you know, prolific cannabis growing areas, they have to spend a lot of money to condition their air to get it to a point where it's reducing the crop risk. So just a little kind of shout out for Southern Alberta. I do really feel that we also have the sunniest place in Canada. We get like 2,900 hours of sunlight. So with the hybridized greenhouse that we have, we are letting the sun do the heavy lifting into the plants. We also do have artificial light, so because it's very important that we reach our daily light integer for the plants. Yeah, so I mean, cannabis just completely changed my life. It hit me like a Mack truck. I remember having a long-term life insurance client. He gave me some Cinderella 99 that he had brought back from the Netherlands himself. And, as he saw me continuing to deteriorate and shared this flower with me, I tried it from a standpoint of being maybe perhaps a bit, I was really just looking for relief from the pain. I did not quite understand I was about to be introduced to a very special little girl that would completely change my life, which is the female cannabis plant. So, my first little puff of Cindy, as I exhaled, I looked at the end of my one hitter and I said, is this what they've been trying to keep me away from? Are you kidding me? And I got mad. I swore to myself and I said, oh boy, you watch what I'm going to go and do. And I took my financial services business and was able to transition that out. And one of my partners still runs that business. But we've been full-time in the cannabis space, passionately crusading for, the absolute very best cannabis medicine to end up in the jars that people, whether it's bought from a store or distributed from their doctor, it is of no matter to me. Those plants better be the best, gorgeous little plants that can be produced. We are trichome farmers. They just happen to ride along on the plants. So really everything that we do about custom, from fertigation to lighting, is about optimizing the conditions around allowing those plants to reach their maximum genetic potential. Because like Nathan said about those 140 cannabinoids, that little chemistry set develops in proportion to how well you manage and look after it. So there is some hardcore hippie stuff down that rabbit hole. And there's also some hardcore science stuff, and I get to kind of sit in the middle. It's very fun to be me and sit between the middle of both of those worlds, because they're kind of colliding together between kind of the traditional stoner hippie type grower and maybe more traditional academia, as we look at the job creation and actually the harm reduction that cannabis brings significantly into all of our communities. So with that, I'll maybe pass it back to you.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and thank you for sharing your story. I think that is an important part of this process. And it's interesting to hear about research and innovation. And when we're so fortunate to have a research leader with Dr. Robert McDonald participating in today's event. He's a professor of the Department of Neuroscience at the University of Lethbridge. He's on the Board of Governors Research Chair in Neuroscience for the Canadian Centre for Behavioral Neuroscience. And shout out to U of L. I'm a proud double alum as well, and I actually sit on the Senate at the U of L. So I go U of L. So I'll turn some time over to you, Dr. McDonald.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to keep this brief. Let me just share my screen if I can. Can you see that?
Yep.
It's good. Okay, so today, I mean, this is a very sort of strange way to give a talk, but I really just wanted to give you an idea of the kind of research questions that we're pursuing surrounding cannabis. And secondly, really to tell you, maybe if you're interested, if you have questions after, what's the state of the field? What's going on? What are the challenges? What's exciting? I'm a bit of an unusual duck. I've been doing cannabis research for 15 years, long before this huge surge in research and interest. So I have that sort of experience of the field as it sort of developed. So my research is really focused on these four main areas. One is, this long talked about effects on memory. And that field was quite messy, and the experiments supporting those kinds of claims were not based on very good science, lots of confounds. One area that a lot of people are interested is the impacts of exposure during adolescence. So this is when people start exploring marijuana, and I got interested in this field because of some wild claims. We have now just gotten a big grant from the federal government, from CIHR, to look at the effects of cannabinoids on neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease, which is very exciting. And we're now working with some people at Oxford who are experts in mood disorders, anxiety, and depression, and we're starting to transition into human work as well. So a lot of the work I'll talk about today is animal work, preclinical research, but we're now transitioning into human work and mood disorders. So, as I said, this is actually a relatively new field of research. We don't actually know a lot, which may shock some of you. Not even the basics of how the system functions. So you have an endocannabinoid system. You have a naturally occurring system in your body and brain that has its own cannabinoids that gets released under circumstances in the brain and the body. And what marijuana is doing is it's artificially activating that system. So the endocannabinoid system has a natural, very important role in the brain and the body. Now, what I'd like to claim, and I'm not popular with anyone in this field. The people who support cannabinoids hate me. The people who think it's so dangerous hate me. Industry doesn't like me. So it's a very strange position to be in. And the reason is because I feel like there's a real overplay of the potential hazards of cannabinoids and the benefits, depending on who it is. And this even includes scientists. So scientists will overplay a hazard, for example, because it's much more likely that you will get funding than if you just go in and try to investigate the basic effects. So this is a real concern with cannabinoids, is being exposed when you're a teenager, during a time when your brain is still developing. And a key part of that development is these emotional systems are not yet under control of the neocortex, so prefrontal cortex. And so if you're taking cannabinoids, it can affect that sort of developmental pathway for those neural circuits to get to adult levels of control. So, you've heard all this stuff, right? So you're probably going to be experimenting with marijuana. There's reports in animal and human studies of all these changes, very dangerous changes. And the one that got me into this area of research is the last one in red, and this really bugged me. So the idea was, if you're a teenager and you smoke marijuana, you're going to get schizophrenia. And these are literally leading scientists in Canada that are making these claims, leading scientists in the US. That really, really got me going. So we decided to look into this literature. And we found a bunch of problems with both the animal and the human work. One of the problems is they use different rat strains, and this can have huge impacts on your results. So certain rat strains, for example, are very susceptible to cannabinoids. In other strains, there's little or no effects. So we're going to use strain as a proxy for individual differences, okay? We look at sex differences, huge sex differences that people were not accounting for. Determination of puberty. So people were just saying, yeah, on this day, these animals are going to go into puberty. That is actually not the case. There's huge differences between males and females and huge differences in strains. And if you start giving them cannabinoids, you can extend puberty or you can shut it down. Doses and administrative differences were just unbelievable. Some of the doses, I mean, I can't imagine a human who could take these doses and survive, or they were very, very low. And the way they assay, the effects on cognition, emotions, and behavior are all very different. So it's a very messy literature. So we went in and did these experiments all over again. We used a medium to high dose where people are claiming these effects, looked at males and females, looked at individual differences, and we simultaneously assessed the gateway hypothesis, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. You smoke marijuana, you're going to become a heroin addict in a few years or something like that. So what did we found? We found that pubertal THC exposure did change the brain, and it was very specific to certain strains and sexes. Okay, so there's sex and strain differences. But when we assessed function, nothing showed up, except in one case where females who were susceptible to the brain changes showed less anxiety than the animals that were not treated. So this is the opposite effect of what you would predict. So brain changes, they do not show up at any functional level at all. What about the gateway hypothesis? You know this idea. So what we did was we exposed subjects to THC during that puberty event again, and then we assessed its incentive motivation. That's just testing to those during adolescence. And we used amphetamine, which is a highly addictive drug. And lo and behold, what we found is no effect. So we did not find support for the gateway hypothesis. And this is actually quite consistent with the solid, good research in the field. So that led us to think, well, if you look at the clinical literature of people who smoke a lot of marijuana when they're teenagers, a small percentage of them might get schizophrenia or very severe mood disorders. And the question for us was why? And what we think is that there's a small percentage of people who will smoke marijuana as teenagers, and they are more susceptible to that exposure than other people, a very small percentage of people. So what we did is we knew that early life stress is a predictor of things like mood disorders and whether or not you use cannabis during the teenage years. So we were interested, well, what happens if we give these animals early stress? So their mothers are going to be stressed. Okay, so the mother is stressed during pregnancy. Then we'll do that exposure to THC during puberty in the offspring, and then we'll assess brain and cognitive function. And what we found is that a strain that's very resistant or resilient to exposure to THC during puberty now showed impairments. So they showed an elevation in anxiety. So our idea is that a very small percentage of people are going to be susceptible to deleterious effects of THC exposure during puberty. There are some sex differences, but it seems like a very small percentage. And if you have early life stress, that can make you more susceptible. So that's a very different story than saying everyone who's smoking marijuana as a teenager is going to become schizophrenic. And then finally, this really exciting line of research. So the thing that's interesting about the cannabinoids from a Alzheimer's perspective is that, for example, CBD on its own targets multiple pathologies that are found in these neurodegenerative disorders. So that's not just targeting one, it's going after multiple pathologies all at the same time. And as you know, in Canada, it's quite inexpensive, it's readily available, and it's relatively safe. So this seems like a real no-brainer for us to sort of investigate this idea. So we have preclinical animal models of Alzheimer's disease, some of the best in the world. And what we're going to do, or what we're doing it right now, is we're treating with various doses of CBD, THC, or both. And excitingly, we're working with a bit of a cannabis guru, and we're pulling out different terpenes and playing around with these terpenes that we know target these pathologies. So a particular brain disease, we're going to pull out particular terpenes, maybe mix it in with CBD and THC and see if we can specifically target this neurodegenerative disorder versus this mood disorder versus this. So that's very, very exciting. And then we're just going to look at the effects of known Alzheimer's pathology and memory. So that's it.
I like how you said, that's it. That's a lot. There's a lot. You covered a lot of ground in there. And that's very, very exciting research. And as Nathan said at the outset, you know, the research, the innovation, the agriculture, it's multifaceted. And you know, it's interesting because back in one of the businesses I owned was an occupational health and safety company, and I'm actually a drug and alcohol trainer for the Department of Transportation. So from an occupational standpoint, it was like, okay, these are the thresholds. This is where it needs to be. You can't be at a safety sensitive position unless you're this, this, and this. So that DOT side of my brain is, okay, this is right and this is wrong, and this is how we need to fit in. So I understand that kind of side of it as well, but then you see the other uses of it, and now how do we talk about, because safety is still a concern. There's still safety issues with specific job functions that won't go away, because whether you're intoxicated with alcohol or drugs, that's dangerous. So I liked the idea of finding like a roadside breathalyzer, but for, you know, how do we measure what is the safe unit for drug consumption and such. So this conversation is exactly what I think we were hoping for, because the chamber a couple years ago, we presented a policy on creating a new pharmaceutical industry in Canada. And some of it was based on thebaine and opioids, and how because the Alberta agriculture system, we know that we have a strong system here, but you know, that's not the way to go. You know, some of the things that we're hearing and some of the excellent results and research that is happening within the cannabis industry, as Jeff can attest to, it's crucial. And so I thank each of you for sharing today. And I appreciate we're short on time, and I'm so glad we got everybody in. But is there any questions from anybody that throw them into the question, or we can take some on some, however. But I really think this is a great step one, and expanding some of these conversations and seeing how maybe we can help people become more informed, and then also help our retail sector be able to discuss things a little bit more in a safe environment, and not be worried about being shut down because their poster had the wrong word on it. Like, I know that's oversimplifying things, but like, wow, we covered a lot. So this is excellent. I'll let somebody else speak now if you have questions or anything, or follow up. Nathan, did you have any final words? Oh, we can't hear you. I know you've unmuted.
Second mic.
There we go.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's always a great pleasure talking about being down stereotypes and tropes. I think the thing I'd love to leave everybody is what we know now is not what it'll be in the future. And the more that we have that conversation, the more opportunities we'll create. And I think that's something that we should all be looking for when we're building out of a global pandemic. So why can't this be one of the things that kind of differentiates us on a go forward? So thank you very much, everybody, for that opportunity.
Thank you, Nathan. And this is actually, I know this is one question that kind of comes up quite a bit that Nick posted. What seems to be the biggest pain point for consumers in the current environment? Black and gray markets seem to still be thriving, and I'm wondering what is holding these consumers back from purchasing from the legal market. So that's an interesting question to pose. Why, you know, the worry about going into a store and being seen versus, I guess, I don't know. That's a tough. Anybody that would like to respond to that from the retail side, like, or
I can go with it if everybody else is okay. What other product comes to market in just excise tax in this province with 24.3%? We are the second highest taxation regime in Canada, behind Nunavut. And what new product comes to market with the government taking 24.3% taxation? And when that does not include shipping, distribution, education, corporate salvage, so on and so forth, which is allocated to another 17%. So before cannabis comes on the market in Alberta, there is 41.3% taxation placed on it. That is very difficult for any new product to come to market.
3% taxation.
Could you imagine if the alcohol industry had 41.3% taxation on it, what we would be listening to and the conversations that would be happening? Craft production had 41.3%. So I think there's things that we need to do. And by the way, that's not including high municipal costs and incredibly high costs for bringing that production at a federal level as well. So in fact, Health Canada has recently announced that they're doing a true cost of bringing cannabis to market at a provincial, municipal, and federal level, which will hopefully be submitted and done by the fall.
Interesting. And that wondering about cost or matter of quality of cannabis, you know, that I see Jeff kind of shaking his head on that as well. And if you guys have to leave, please, we understand. But just some of these questions, just to quality. How do you measure quality from a basement grow to a mass producer?
I think maybe one of the comments on the quality of the grow is it is important to understand that from a commercial cultivation standpoint, Canada is one of the only places in the world where we have alignment between the federal government, the provincial government, the municipal government, as well as the full suite of banking and investment banking products. So we have a really unique environment here, which is tremendous. And the flip side of that is, okay, here's billions of dollars. None of you have ever worked on a drill rig before, but go design a top drive drill platform, have fun. Like, of course it's going to be a darn disaster. Cannabis from a cultivation standpoint is one of the most unique cultivars that we have on the planet. We don't have any plant that can consume as much water, nutrients, and sunlight. It puts all the other plants basically to shame in most categories. So it is very dang difficult to grow amazing cannabis at a large scale when no one's ever done it at that scale. Like, we have 8,000 plants in flower, you know, and harvest 200 kilos of dried every month that pass microbials in 90 kilogram lots. Like, that is very, very, very difficult to do. I think the cultivation space in Canada is about 4 billion deep on this experiment, and they've all missed it. They've all messed it up in regards to how complex the plant is to produce. And they're not giving people like me who rely on this as medicine, the goods ain't in the jar. That's changing. There's been tremendous progress in our industry. And, you know, you'll see in the next year or so, that gap continue to close, where really from a product quality standpoint, we can compete with the black market and the gray market, but then also through the collaboration with the retail stores, just provide a really a better experience overall.
Thank you, Jeff. Anybody else have some last comments? Or
I think if I may jump in, I think the illicit market one is a really interesting point, but I think, unfortunately we hyper focus on it. I think as a true consideration, we have to keep in mind from Stats Canada that prior to legalization, 22 to 26% of Canadians were self-identifying as cannabis consumers prior to legalization. So those were people that are in the cannabis, were in the cannabis market, in the legacy market. But that means that 78 to 74% of Canadians were not at. we need to find a better opportunity to bring in new consumers and have an ability to talk to them and educate them about the effects and the consequences of a new product to market. That is very difficult to do underneath the current regimes. 66% of Canadians who have consumed or have not consumed cannabis in their lives have said ingestibles are the means that they would like to consume those cannabis. That is not a predominant part of the market as of right now. Flower is still king, queen of the market and will continue to be for cannabis culture people. But new consumers of the market, the ability to find a bridge to them to have the pie grow in a an intoxicant and a non-intoxicant matter is really important if this is going to be a product that it can actually potentially have displacement of other more harmful inebriants in society.
Thank you. And you know what, Dr. McDonald, I want to thank you for doing your research, because we like you. We think that the questions you're researching are important questions, and they're important questions. So thank you for your dedication to the research and innovation of this vast topic.
Well, thanks a lot. And please keep in touch, everyone. If there's any questions you have or interested in tracking my research, that would be great.
Perfect. Well, I'm just going to quickly thank Nathan and Sam and Blaine and Jeff and then Dr. McDonald so much for participating in this event. You know, at first we weren't sure how many people would get involved and show up, but I think we had a great show of people, and I think this is just one step in getting that conversation to continue and to grow. So thank you everyone for participating today. This has been really, really great.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks, Blaine.